Clone loyalty does not seem to be as advertised anymore.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in The Bad Batch, Episode 3, The Solitary Clone. Let's go. So first, let's take a closer look at that title, The Solitary Clone. First of all, clones, by definition, are not supposed to be solitary. They are meant to be copies, which is why the clones in Star Wars develop such strong bonds, calling one another brothers. The Bad Batch, in particular, has a strong bond with one another because they are the only irregular clones. They're a minority of a minority. The episode title refers to, obviously, Crosshair, who is feeling more and more isolated in the galaxy. Remember, the last season ended with the Empire bombarding Tipoca City on Kamino, knowing that he was still inside the complex. Then, we learned here he was left for dead for more than 30 days on a platform until he was discovered. That is a lot of time for a clone to be without companionship. This episode even has several poignant shots of Crosshair where he's all alone.
All by himself. That poor clone. He's all by himself.
Well done, high five. Right, for instance, so the shot of Crosshair sleeping on a cot called to mind a prison cell. This is a twist on the title, meaning that he is almost in a kind of solitary confinement. There is also this really hard-hitting shot of him in front of these names of the fallen, but more on those names in a bit. The point is, Crosshair has no friends. His fellow clones want nothing to do with him, like he's the Forrest Gump of the Empire.
I can't sit here.
Those same clones are being replaced by conscripted TK troopers, and other clones like Commander Cody are becoming disillusioned and going AWOL. So we begin on planet Desix, a former separatist world that I believe we're seeing for the first time. The episode does a great job of immediately establishing a medieval feel to this world. The people are agrarian, which automatically gives us the idea that they are humble and hardscrabble. And the Citadel is essentially like a giant castle, complete with an enormous rampart that runs up to the height of the fortress. Like all the best Star Wars, it looks familiar and new all at once.
Hey man, why are you eating so much cereal today?
You know, Doug, it's like when you're a kid. You wake up, eat a bowl of cereal, and you watch cartoons. Tradition, nostalgia, the ScreenCrush way.
But you can't eat that sugary cereal. You got your New Year's resolutions to think of.
Well, you're right. I am trying to cut down on carbs and sugar, but that's why I'm glad that I found Magic Spoon. They're the sponsor of this video. It tastes like all the cereals from my childhood, but it has no gluten, soy, and there are 0 grams of sugar. Most importantly though, it tastes so good. Now personally, I like the cookies and cream flavor the best, but you can choose your own variety box from cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, cookies and cream, maple waffle, honey nut, blueberry muffin, and cinnamon roll. Like, I'm not kidding when I say how high quality this is. 0 grams of sugar, 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving. Plus, there's only 140 calories. And the Magic Spoon cereal bars have 1 gram of sugar, 10 grams of protein, 4 net grams of carbs, and only 130 calories per bar. I am not going back to regular cereal, and Magic Spoon is so confident in their product that it's backed with their 100% happiness guarantee. So if it's not for you, they'll refund your money and you can part ways as friends. So click the link below to try out a variety pack and stay on top of your New Year's resolutions. Use the promo code ScreenCrush at checkout or go to magicspoon.com/ScreenCrush to save $5 off your order today. Now back to the Easter eggs. Governor Groton arrives, and that's a pretty great name for an evil governor. Graded bean rotten. Groton, got it? Groton arrives in an Imperial shuttle, which falls somewhere in between the evolution of the new class Republic attack shuttles of the Clone Wars and the Lambda class that we saw in the original trilogy. He is being escorted by regular TK troopers.
TK, you know what is that? Is that, what are they just gonna name that later, like in a newspaper? TK.
No, Doug, TK is the designation given to human troopers who were conscripted into the Empire. You know, like in this classic clip.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Sorry, I meant like this.
TK-421, wire to at your post.
Whereas the clone troopers have the designation CC.
CC-2224.
So these are the regular human troopers that the Empire is slowly replacing the clones with. The best way to tell is the larger, slightly more awkward helmets, actually closer to the cadet helmets that Ezra wears in Star Wars Rebels. The governor is named Ames, and I thought it was interesting that she mostly wears this badass looking mask. It gives her voice a mechanical quality.
State your business here.
Because, as we see, she is being protected by battle droids, and her disillusionment with the Empire has made her more rigid and machine-like. Later, this will manifest as her internal conflict where she agrees to listen to her humanity and seek out peace.
Not a great plan.
Now, I'm the kind of nerd who always loves the political stuff in Star Wars, so I am loving seeing this transition. When the Clone Wars ended, all of the Separatist planets stopped fighting, but it didn't mean that they automatically agreed to join the Republic. It just meant that the Confederacy of independent systems no longer existed. The systems are still independent, they're just not banded together. But now, the Empire is devouring every system that it can. In the days of the Republic, a planet would decide to join the government, and then it would send representatives to the Republic Senate. But, as we see in Andor, the Senate has little power in the Empire. Tarkin even told us,
"The regional governors now have direct control over their territories."
And we see that Tarkin line starting right here. If a planet does not choose to join the Empire, then a governor is just appointed, and then that planet gets no representation in the puppet Senate. But of course, Ames resists with her reprogrammed battle droids, and man, it was good hearing these guys in action again.
That doesn't look good.
Later, Cody talks about the droid shutdown order that was initiated at the end of the Clone Wars. Rex mentioned the same order in Star Wars Rebels right here.
The whole droid army was given a shutdown command.
Yeah, how do the droids shut down anyways?
Well, after Vader killed all the Separatist leaders, he shut down all the battle droids. In fact, if they would have included that scene in the movie, it would have been intercut with Obi-Wan sending out a signal to tell all the Jedi to go into hiding, essentially telling two different groups of fighters in the war to stop fighting at the same time.
Yeah, plus there was Order 66, which activated all the clones. So there are two mass orders in the movie. One causes an army to rise, and the other orders one to fall.
That's a great observation. High five. The people on Desix are probably able to reactivate some of their droids because they have a tactical battle droid.
They've split their assault. Recommend Protocol 4.
These are hyper-intelligent droids that gave the Republic troops a lot of trouble during the Clone Wars. And later we see they have some BX commando droids like we first saw in the Clone Wars episode Rookies. Then we shift over to Crosshair, who is living at a cloning facility on Coruscant. Notice this is far away from the high towers of the capital because clones are increasingly being treated as disposable units, not as veterans. That's how this happens.
Help a veteran get a warm meal.
Like I mentioned earlier, everybody's treating Crosshair like he just farted. One of the other clones says,
I heard the defense recruitment bill is up for a vote again.
Now this bill, which will pass because the Senate is a rubber stamp for Palpatine, this bill is essentially a galactic draft. Ordinary people will be conscripted into Imperial service, and the clones will slowly be phased out. In fact, we saw this conscription service in action in Solo.
Your Empire needs you! Troopers forward!
Now this line,
well, let's hope it doesn't pass,
makes you realize that this human conscription is devastating for these clones. I mean, think about it. Their entire existence is based on serving this government, and now they're just going to become an inconvenience. And unfortunately, this is like the experience of way too many of our veterans who come home from the service and are not given the care and help that they need to re-enter society. Then Rampart calls Crosshair into his office. You remember Rampart, the villain who was put in charge of shutting down the clone program and then killed poor Captain Wilco to keep the Bad Batch's existence a secret.
I will not falsify an official report.
I will.
I thought it was interesting that Rampart's office is designed to mimic Palpatine's, with the wide desk and the expansive window. Now this kind of layout is often used as an intimidation tactic, to make it harder to see your superior because you're blinded by the light behind them.
I'm blinded by the light, and I can't see the space Nazi in front of me.
Really singing today. The Arabesh on Rampart's datapad reads Cargo Unit Checklist. Now this is when Rampart runs down what Crosshair has been up to.
You've been medically cleared for active duty. How long were you left stranded on that Kamino platform?
32 rotations.
Yeah, I don't get it. Why is Crosshair still fighting for the Empire? They left him for dead. What is it, just doubling down?
You know, buddy, I think the reason he's sticking with the Empire is because he genuinely believes in the Empire and for what it stands for. Like Cyril Karn in Andor, he's a person who just wants to see order established in the galaxy.
I see. So what's in Cyril's
private box? I know, I have no idea. I was actually hoping you would know.
You've been in my private box.
What's in the box?
So Rampart gives Crosshair a new mission to neutralize the rebellious governor, but he doesn't give him a command because he's not quite sure how much he can trust Crosshair. After all, he failed in his assignment to kill the Bad Batch several times in Season 1. So instead, his commander is an old clone favorite of ours, Commander Cody, who served under Obi-Wan, of course, in Revenge of the Sith. He's the clone that we first see getting the Order 66 command. Now, all through the Clone Wars, you can always tell it's Cody because of the scar on his temple. Earlier, I mentioned the War Memorial Wall. It's a really nice touch that it has statues of clone troopers at its corners. Now, I thought this would have all the clone names on it, so I started to translate all this Arabesh. But then I realized this is mostly just like a word salad of random letters. Like this one says DFKKDSW. But I do think that there is some subliminal messaging here that is targeting children. Like how this line says LSDFK, which obviously stands for LSD for kids, very inappropriate. And these letters here just beneath it spell out your mom. Cody says,
rumors are more and more clones have been questioning the order.
And remember, when the clones say regs, they are referring to each other as regular troopers. We saw a few regs go AWOL last season. Rex left at the end of the Clone Wars when Ahsoka removed his control chip, and he started recruiting other clones as a resistance against the Empire, including Gregor. Remember, last season the Bad Batch rescued Gregor when he tried to desert. And there's also the clone conscientious objector Cut, who we saw in episode 2 last season, and an entire squad of clones who refused to obey orders in the episode Rescue on Ryloth. It is interesting that the clones are showing more autonomy than regular soldiers. After all, in Attack of the Clones, we were told that they were created to be totally obedient.
They are totally obedient, taking any order without question.
Now, that may have been what the Kaminoans designed them to be, but war changed the clones. They gave themselves names, changed their appearance. The Clone Wars series actually charted how they embraced their individuality, and that fight for individuality is what the actual Bad Batch are about, a group of genetically identical people who are trying to defy conformity. And Cody expresses this struggle for individuality with 4 words.
Good soldiers follow orders.
Remember, this was the order given to clones during Order 66 that we heard in the Great Clone Wars arc, Clone Conspiracy.
Good soldiers follow orders.
And also later in the Bad Batch.
Good soldiers follow orders.
These words remind every clone that for a moment, their actions were not their own, and they were robbed of their freedom of choice. And maybe this explains why they are more prone to rebellion. As Rampart says,
clone loyalty does not seem to be as advertised anymore.
The clones are more likely to seek out freedom precisely because they are denied that freedom.
Man, you're starting to sound like Nemec's journal.
Remember this. Freedom is a pure idea.
Oh god, Andor was so good. Alright, speaking of separatist politics, Ames says,
Dooku was right in the end.
And I love this line because, again, it makes us consider how the Clone Wars appeared to everyday people. The Clone Wars episode, Heroes on Both Sides, was about the Republic and the Confederacy secretly negotiating a peace treaty. This is the episode where Padme negotiated with Senator Bonteri, which was alluded to in this episode.
So much so, my colleague Mina Bonteri and I put forth a treaty with separatists and Republic senators alike to end the war.
That episode showed us that the Separatists were actually made up of systems that simply did not want to be part of the Republic anymore. And you remember how Dooku was described in Attack of the Clones.
I think that Count Dooku was behind it.
He is a political idealist, not a murderer.
Even the Jedi thought that Dooku was just a guy who thought that the Republic had become too corrupt to function, and Dooku was right. The everyday people of the Separatist planets don't know that Dooku was a Sith Lord. To them, he is a martyr, a fallen hero who was murdered by the Jedi. And then a droid battle tank like the ones we saw all through the prequels and the Clone Wars fires on Crosshair's diplomatic shuttle. Well, I guess those negotiations were short. Small detail here that I noticed, the emblem of the planet, this circle, matches the design on Ames's tunic that we saw earlier on. Earlier I talked about how this citadel is set up like a medieval castle, and Crosshair's mission is essentially to storm this castle and rescue a governor. There's even a winding stone staircase that is like something straight out of a medieval film. Now, I loved watching him work to infiltrate the castle and later on using his reflectors. We never really get to see Crosshair do like straight up sniper stuff, and this is what he was literally made to do. It is kind of crazy that they made a clone that can do this, but pilots couldn't hit a 2-meter exhaust port on the space station. The clones have a hard time rolling a stun grenade through the shields of the droid destroyers because they're rolling them too fast. In the Clone Wars, there was actually a whole episode where Ahsoka taught Saw Gerrera's partisans how to roll one of these things. Now there is an awesome moment during the battle when a popper hits a battle droid and then it slowly sinks past the droideka's force field and blows it up. We've seen like hundreds of droids explode in Star Wars. It was very cool that they found a new way to destroy this one. The showdown with Ames and Cody was brilliant, and I think it perfectly explains the disillusionment of these clone forces. The Republic stood for something. It stood for peace and justice. The Empire stands for itself. Now Cody tries to justify his actions by parroting the company line.
The Empire seeks to establish peace and order throughout the galaxy.
Ames mentions the peace proposal that I talked about earlier, and here it's important to note that Palpatine was actually the one who rejected this plan, and Dooku also worked to sabotage it behind the scenes. So, in Palpatine's galaxy, in his empire, there can never be any real peace, which Crosshair demonstrates here.
I gave you an order. Follow it, or face the consequences for
And this is the moment when Cody realizes that the Empire has no honor and he's not fighting for peace anymore. He's fighting for the Empire to seize control of stuff. And as George Lucas has said several times, the battle for things, the need to hold on to things, is what caused Anakin Skywalker's fall from the light to the dark side. Just one example of how Anakin's micro struggle was symbolic of the macro struggle that shows the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire. And afterwards, Kevin Kiner's score gives us this amazing music sting to end the scene. Afterwards, the Empire easily takes control of the city. They apprehend non-human species, a Rodian and Aqualish, and the Star Destroyer looms over the Citadel, which is a neat visual metaphor to say, we now rule over you. And the new garrison troops arrive and notice that they are conscripted soldiers and not clones. This also sends Cody a clear message. His kind are being phased out. He's not fighting this war beside his clone brothers anymore. Much like Crosshair, he has become a solitary clone. Next, he looks at the names of the dead and wonders, what was it all for? And this is the key line of the episode.
You know what makes us different from battle droids? We make our own decisions, our own choices. We have to live with them too.
It was that freedom to choose that Palpatine took away from them with Order 66 that all of the clones across the galaxy are now going to fight to regain. They want to be their own men. The episode ends with Crosshair getting the news that Cody has gone AWOL, and Rampart drops this brutal rabbit punch.
How these clones around you keep disappearing.
This is just rubbing salt in the wound of Crosshair's loneliness. Think of it like this. In a way, Crosshair is the noblest hero on the show. He has sacrificed friendship, family, all for what he considers to be the greater good. I love that the show is taking time to flesh out his story, his characterization. He'll be a more compelling villain if we can sympathize with him, or even if we kind of want him to succeed. And guys, just a reminder, hit our link in the description to get $5 off your Magic Spoon order today. And that's all the Easter eggs we found, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.